Hi, and welcome to the North Carolina Therapeutic Riding Center. We're excited for you to join us today on our short video on leading techniques in a therapeutic riding class lesson. This is Ranger. He'll be showing you the ropes from the horse side, and my name's Audrey, and hopefully I'll be able to share with you our intentions and goals for how we want our leaders to lead in our classes. So first things first, we want to talk about how we want to hold the lead line and where we want to be when we're leading the horse. So the perfect position for our therapeutic riding classes is going to be right at your horse's head. So your shoulder is going to be right behind their ear. And that way you can still see your horse's eyes and ears, so you know when they're giving you signals or giving you feedback that you need to be aware of. But you're far enough ahead so that you're not overlapping with the sidewalker that's working with your rider. The next thing to keep in mind is how we would like for you to hold the lead rope. It's very important not to wrap the lead rope around your hand, because if the horse takes off with you or walks away quickly, you're going to be stuck and your hand's really going to be hurt as a result. So we want to make sure that you fold the lead rope slack over in your hand as you're holding, if you have any left over. And then the next thing to remember, and this is a great friendly way to remember it, is to always have a smile in your lead rope. You'll notice that I have a little bit of a droop here. I'm not holding at the horse's halter so tight that I'm hanging on his head and he's having to carry the weight of my arm. But I'm also not so far away that, we've got too much dangling, or I'm not able to properly control the horse. So you want to imagine about a foot of length in the lead rope and enough to have that smile in the lead rope. That will allow you to effectively lead your horse without getting in their face and over leading your horse. So before we do the demonstration, I just want to very quickly talk about the best thing that you can do for your therapeutic riding horse after you tack them up when you bring them in the arena is to warm them up. So this is a great opportunity to see where they're at, both physically and mentally. So you may notice that they're a little ouchy. You may also notice they're got a little bit of a bad mood today or anything like that. And it's a great opportunity to either work through it or to decide if maybe they need the class off and we need to substitute another horse out for them. So there's 3 really great, quick and easy warm-ups to do that are going to allow you to check in with your horse. And I'm going to demonstrate all those in a minute, but just to go through it really quickly. The first one has a lot of different names, but basically you want to work on matching your energy, or your horse's energy, to your energy. So it's also known as mirroring, or the mirror game with your horse. And the idea is that you're going to ask your horse to walk out when you walk out, and your horse should slow down when you slow down. So whatever speed you determine without having to pull on them, you should be able to have your horse keeping up and adjusting their body the moment that you do. So they're mirroring you. The second great activity is reinforcing the woes. So we want to make sure, thank you, Ranger, we want to make sure that our horse is stopping when we stop. So when we ask them to whoa, it should be immediately right next to us. If they're whoaing several feet ahead, then we need to correct that. And then eventually, the more we repeat that, they will hopefully be whoaing right next to us. And the last one is really a true warm-up, where we're going to be changing speed, changing direction, doing circles, getting them bending left and right, making sure they're paying attention to us. Switch it up, kind of surprise them, but make sure that you throw in some circles, some trots, some changes of direction, some woes, and walking. And just kind of have a variety of exercises you're asking them to do so that we're able to make sure their muscles and their mind are engaged. So from the very beginning, it's great to think about how you're asking your horse to move. So very often we just start going and we don't give them a chance to walk with us. So the best way to get a horse to walk out is for them to engage from the hind end. And you really don't want to be pulling them into the walk. You'd like for them to take their first step when you take your first step. Now Ranger's been standing here in the sun for a little while, so he's kind of feeling a little relaxed. This is something that's very common in a therapeutic riding lesson. So you want to let him know that we're getting ready to go. So sometimes I'll often just pull him a little bit to the side or ask him to go one way or to the other to start to engage and let him know it's coming, so that I don't automatically walk off and just drag him with me. So I'm letting him know we're getting ready to walk on, and when I'm ready to go, hopefully he'll take a step with me and I don't lose that smile in my lead rope for very long. So the idea is always to think about your body position and where you are. Really remember what we talked about when we were sitting over there and keeping your shoulder right behind your horse's ear, even when you're asking him to speed up. So I'm going to ask him to extend his walk down the long side, and basically I start to think about getting a little spring in my step. wake my energy up, let him know I'm walking faster, and the ideal is that he's automatically going to do the same adjustment with his feet. Sometimes the first time you ask, it takes a little while to get them to pay attention. The most important thing to remember, don't lose that smile for very long in the future. If you have to ask for a moment, give it right back. He's very nicely picking up with me, walking along, and eventually we should be so in rhythm that my feet and his feet are hitting the ground, and his front feet and my feet are hitting the ground at the same time. So Ranger's really woken up. He's walking really nicely with me. You can tell that I'm keeping that slack in my lead rope. He's responding to my body energy more than me pulling, and I'm not getting in a tug of war with him. So if I change gears and I slow down, he slows down right with me. If I ask him to pick back up, all I'm doing is increasing my step. Okay, so the next thing we want to talk about is the appropriate way to ask a horse to whoa in a therapeutic riding class. It's a three-part process where we want to really make sure that we're giving them all the cues, and eventually you may not even need some of the ending cues because they're responding so much just to your body language. So the first step is to begin with a verbal cue. When we ask our horses to whoa, we simply say whoa. The next thing to do is to begin to give them a slight half halt with the lead rope, and you're gently pulling back. It's not constant pressure, but just the slightest pull back towards the center of their chest. While you're doing this, you're going to begin to turn your body to face their head. At this point, we're hoping they've stopped, but if not, and you need a final whoaing cue, you can then pull back firmly on the lead rope to the center of their chest. Again, this is not a constant pressure forever, but merely a firm pull and then immediately release, because that's telling them they've done the right, their reward for doing the right thing. Thank you. So, I'm going to do it a little bit faster and put it all together, but those are the steps that go into the whoa. It does need to kind of be a smooth, quick process because obviously we don't want to be walking all the way down the arena before we finally get them to stop. So when you know that you want your horse to whoa, you say whoa, jiggle, turn, pull back, and they will hopefully be stopped. Horse to whoa. Very often you're going to see your horse stop all out of alignment like this, and it's very challenging for the rider because when their legs are uneven down here, it means their back is also uneven. As your rider's on, oh, thank you, Ranger. I was just going to ask him to square up, and he read my mind. The goal is for your horse to stop square. By pulling back to the center of their chest instead of out to the side, you're honestly going to get this a lot more often just with that one move. However, if they do stop with their legs all spread out, not even, it's your job as a leader to square them up. If you're going to be stopped, especially for a long amount of time, if, for example, if the instructor is going to need to give the rider additional coaching or training at a whoa for a moment, you'll really want to make sure the horse is square. It's good for the rider, good for the horse's back. Ranger did it for me, but if your horse isn't as nice as Ranger and your horse is a little out of alignment, let's see if I can make him unsquare. He says, I know what I'm supposed to do. You can simply ask with the slightest pressure on his shoulder, and you just want to ask him just to give a hair. He's squared at his front, his back are not perfect, so we could maybe ask one more time for that back foot to even up with its partner. Thank you. And again, it's a minor little adjustment. You kind of have to play around with it, so it's great to do in the warm-up. It's a great activity to do. There you go, that's the one I want. There. And he says I have to get rid of a bug. It's a great activity to play with in the warm-up as well when you're doing this whoa walk-on game, because it gives you a chance to understand exactly how much you need to ask. Some horses, like Ranger, really understand what you want and you just need the slightest touch. Some horses you may have to ask them several times because they're not used to being asked to halt square, but if we all do it, eventually they're gonna do it naturally on their own. We're gonna demonstrate the whoa in motion. I have Ranger walking out. So again, it's that multi-step process where I'm gonna begin to say whoa, I'm gonna jiggle, I'm gonna turn and pull. And the intention is that he should whoa pretty quickly. That's a little further ahead than I would like, so I'll very quickly ask him to take a step back and say, that's actually where I wanted your head to be when I asked you to whoa. I'm not moving my body, I'm asking him to move his. So this is a great activity to repeat a couple more times, and hopefully by the second or third time you have your horse stopping right in front of you. So I'm going to demonstrate that one more time, and let's see if we can get a little bit of a quicker response. So here we go. Again, I'm letting him take a step with me instead of pulling. When I'm ready to whoa, I say whoa, jiggle, turn, and pull. That was bit better. So for the final warm-up, this one I like to call it crazy driving, but really what's going on is you're encouraging your horse to move around the arena, to change direction, to change speed, to lengthen their stride, shorten their stride, whoa, all of this you're doing with just your body. And the intention is to encourage your horse to engage with you and pay attention to you so that they're watching you to tell them what to do and where to put their feet. So this idea is to make the most of the whole arena. Move around, change directions, surprise your horse, make him think you're going that way, then turn the other way. The goal is that he's so tuned into you that he should be able to adjust his body so quickly that it's as if you're moving as one. So sometimes when you start out, it's not quite as perfect, but by the end, your hope is that he's tuned into you enough that you really are keeping your smile on the lead rope the entire time, and he's just walking right next to you or whatever way that you decide to go. Can tell, in some ways Ranger really started responding. I was able to get a little lighter in the handle. There were times where he still wanted to kind of be pokey, but all in all, he started to engage with me more, and hopefully you saw a difference from the start towards the end, where he really was starting to pay attention, and I was having to use my lead rope much less to engage him, and he was really just responding to my body language. Another great thing about this is not only does it get his muscles moving and turning and wake his mind up, he's also getting a chance to see the lay of the land. So in your therapeutic riding class, your instructor may have a variety of props and equipment set up in the arena. This is a great time to incorporate those. Take a whoa by something that he's checking out, let him look at it, let him smell it. And if you notice that it's just something he's really struggling with getting comfortable with, let your instructor know. but take the time to show him around the arena and let him see things that might be a surprise or be something he's not used to seeing. So the last thing you may have seen was with a horse like Ranger, who's very low energy and kind of wanting to go pokey today. I asked him to trot. I really had to get my energy up. I really had to let him know what was coming. And you may have felt like, gosh, he's really exaggerating that run. But the idea is that I'm trying to translate some of my energy over into him. You may have a horse on the other side of the spectrum that is power walking around the arena, and you need to really think about letting that energy come down. So what you saw today was my intention to get Ranger moving forward, slowing down, changing direction, and whoa-ing all when I changed my body energy. I certainly had great results with the slowing down and whoa-ing, and I think towards the end we started getting a little bit better movement forward out of him. So the idea is to play with it, have fun in that 15 minutes before the start of your class, and make sure your horse is warmed up, paying attention, engaged, and make sure they've seen everything in the arena so they're ready to be the best therapeutic riding horse they could be. Now that our horse is warmed up, we're ready to help our riders get on. We're going to enter into the mounting area. You guys have all probably seen this in your volunteer orientation, but I just wanted to review it very quickly to show you the 3 stations of our mounting area process. And Ranger's got a little itch. So the first thing we do when the instructor asks us to come on down, hopefully our horse is nice and warmed up and paying attention to us, we pull into what we call Station 1. That's out of the actual active riding area and behind the barrier of the mounting area. Right here you can see we've got a single barrier, sometimes it'll be longer. You want to pull out of the riding area so the other leaders can keep warming their horses up, or if a rider's already mounted they can continue riding and warming their horse up. Here your instructor's going to come over and lower the stirrups, do the final girth check, and at this point in time you will put your reins on your horse. Up until then you've been carrying them so that they're not getting in the way of your warm-up process. Once all of that tack check has happened and your rider's up and ready to get on, we're going to walk over to the mounting ramp. And quickly I'm going to describe, I'm going to walk myself as if I'm walking into the mounting ramp with the hope that it will line Ranger up as close to it as we can get. A few feet away I'm going to pull him to a full stop, turn around and face him, back myself in so that he can walk right next to the mounting ramp. I'm going to demonstrate that next so you can see what it looks like. So again, we don't want to start off with that tug of war. If the horse has been standing for a while, they may kind of started to relax again. So we want to wake him up by asking him to take a step to the side, and then hopefully he's going to engage his feet fairly evenly with when I do. I'm asking him to whoa a few steps away, come to a full stop. This allows me to step in front of Ranger. It also gets his attention because this is the part of the mounting process where we need really fine little adjustments, and if he's kind of looking at a bird flying by, it'll be hard to get that response. So again, we want his attention on us as the leader. As I begin to back up and ask him to take slow, focused steps towards the mounting ramp or stairs. And this process can be nice and slow. Again, I don't want to get into a tug of war, but just gently asking him every time I take a step for him to take a step, and then giving him the lead rope back each time he does. Our rider is standing in the middle of the stairs. The stirrup is hopefully lined up with the middle. He's very close to the mounting ramp. The only thing that I would correct in this situation, again, we look at Ranger's feet. He's not perfectly square, so he's about to take on a weight from his rider. So the best way that we can help support him and his balance and his back, as well as the rider when they get on, is to ask him to be as square as possible. Now, I know how well Ranger squares up and how well he responds to little adjustments, so this is something I think I can correct in the mounting area. However, if you've worked with your horse and you know when you ask him to the back, they really take a lot of big steps, they're not very good at little adjustments, this is a great time to circle back around and line up again. Never be afraid to do it again. It's always good to have this be a happy, low-key area where the horse feels comfortable and balanced, because this is where we want the rider to be able to get on with no issues. So I'm going to ask for the slightest little squared up step. Let's see if we can get it. Good. Now I love that. That was a nice smooth little adjustment. We managed to keep our position pretty well. If he had taken such a big step that we lost that stirrup in the middle of the stairs, I'll probably go back around again. but this is a great spot for a horse to be. And just like when we're in the therapeutic riding class and we're stopping for a longer period of time, my body position is going to remain in front of him. This is just a visual cue to Ranger that we're going to hang out here for a minute so he doesn't feel like he's got to be ready to move. He can relax for a second. I'm here as a visual barrier to let him know we're going to be load. Once my rider gets on, I continue to stay facing my horse, and I'm going to walk over to station 3 and allow the instructor to step down off of the ramp or the stairs in a slow, even fashion. All right, Ranger. Once we're away from the stairs, I can then turn into my regular leader position and then ask my horse to stop in position in station 3. Finally, here we are in station 3. This is usually a pretty quick adjustment where the instructor will let the other volunteer take his or her place, and we'll do a final girth and stirrup check to make sure everything's good with the tack. And this is where we begin the exciting process of becoming a partner and a support network for our rider. It's no longer just me and Ranger, and we're no longer training in that warm-up kind of setting. Now, I'm trying to do everything that I can to support the rider and think through how much support the rider needs from me in the leader capacity. So that's the next thing we're going to talk about quickly. How do we lead when our rider gets on the horse? So as I said, now that our rider's on the horse, this is where there's a really exciting process of learning and getting to know our riders better and understanding what we need to do to support them on the horse. The overall goal of this process is for our riders to learn to ride. So as leaders, we're hopefully coming to this with a horse background, and we hopefully know what we're doing most of the time. Now is our chance to help our riders learn all those things that we have the chance to learn. So this this process is a little bit on-the-job training, where you're going to really want to ask your instructor, what support does my rider need? And if you've worked with us before, you know that our riders really run the gamut of skill level, challenges that they're working with, abilities with the horses. We have some riders where you really are going to be in charge of the horse and the rider's just working on merely holding the reins. And then we have some riders where you're actually going to unclip and be in more of a spotter capacity where you're merely walking next to the horse, they're really in charge, and everything in between. So the most important thing to remember when you're leading is not to do for the rider, but to let them do as much as they can do. So everything that we did in the warm-up is great to engage our horse, but then we've got to split our brain a little bit between making sure that our horse is still listening to us, but that we're not stealing the attention from the rider. So in this case, you're going to begin to learn what level of support your rider needs for every activity. Does it mean when they ask them to whoa? You may see that they're asking, but the horse is not responding very well, and you want to reinforce what the rider's asking, then maybe you step in with that body signal. However, for a rider that's able to whoa completely by themselves, don't do it for them. If the instructor asks the rider to whoa and maybe they weren't paying attention, you guys just keep trucking until the rider asks for that whoa. Really, it's a great opportunity to allow the horse to be the teacher, and the cause and effect of what the horse does in response to the rider is the best teacher that as therapeutic riding instructors that we can hope for, because that's immediate feedback that takes a long time to verbalize. So as a leader, you really want to make sure that you are in a supportive role and you're reinforcing the cues from the rider. You may have to split your attention a little bit, keep an eye on your rider to see if they're making motions for the whoas and the turns, or you may know your rider well enough to know, I know they can do it 100%, I'm not doing anything until they've asked. So you probably saw that Ranger enjoys the slower speeds, which is not uncommon with our therapy horses. They get used to this kind of work. Sometimes it feels repetitive for them, and it's hard to get them engaged. I really tried to show you some tips that you can use in your warm-up to get him moving, wake him up, make him start responding to your body energy, but sometimes you need a little bit more. What I have here is a dressage whip, and I really want to emphasize that this is not for smacking the horse or anything like that. This is definitely a great tool that's more of a visual than anything else. But the great way to really utilize this is it allows us to engage our horse from the hind end so that we get that impulsion that we want. Oftentimes when we see a horse being led around the arena and pulled, what's happening is it's causing their top line or their back to hollow out. they're all strung out and stretched out. It's bad for their back, and it actually does not give the best quality movement for our riders. So that's a big reason, not only because it's incorrect leading, but also that's a big reason why we really don't want to get into a tug of war with our horses. So after you've done all that energy work, you've tried to wake them up, if you're still finding you have a sluggish horse and it's not due to any lameness issues or anything like that, a great tool is this dressage whip. Now, I like to hold it in the hand that I have closest to the horse's head. It still allows me to keep that smile in my lead rope. I'm holding the excess slack just as I was before. I just have this dressage whip. Just as if I was riding with it, it's pointing down to the ground. Now, in our line of work, we have a little bit of a challenge because oftentimes we're going to have a sidewalker here. Do you want to be my sidewalker, Tracy? So Tracy's going to just demonstrate the position of the sidewalker, so you can imagine that really limits a lot of what we can do, which is not a bad thing because this is really just a visual for Ranger to let him know that I like for him to walk out and I don't want to get in a tug of war. So the area that I would be lightly touching him with it is actually going to be his shoulder right here. It's not something that I'm going to reach around behind to try to get his hind end on. Tracy certainly doesn't want me to do that. And it's not useful. It puts us out of position. We're not paying attention to our horse, and it's not a safe way to get your horse to walk on. So what I'm doing is I'm lightly tapping him with this dressage whip right here. The moment I get a response, it's down on the ground and out of play. The most important thing to remember is this is something that horses, all of the horses here really respect. It's not to be used lightly. So if you are to the point where you're going to hold the dressage whip, it's still the last line of cueing. You still want to go through all those steps I showed you where you use your verbal cue. You ask the horse to walk on with your energy is up, and then you maybe do a slight pull on the lead rope, never constantly tugging. All of those things need to happen before you use the dressage whip. This isn't a crutch, this is that final tool to reinforce when we have a horse that's really feeling sluggish or is really tuned out for the day, to ask them to re-engage. Oftentimes, one use of this, that's all you need. So I'm asking him with my voice and this clucking, my body energy is coming up. Funnily enough, he's already walking forward and I'm just holding the dressage whip. Now what if I really wanted a little more move up? I haven't even had to use it yet. But it's really reinforcing that I want him to engage, I want him to listen. I haven't even had to use it, just merely holding it. So if he starts getting too forward, I'm going to relax him down by my leg and recognize that I don't even really need to use it. So then we have on the other side of the spectrum a horse that is really walking out a little more quickly than we would like, and how do we slow them down? It's just as easy it is to get into the tug of war to ask your horse to go. We very often see people getting into this tug of war asking them to slow down. And what happens is the harder you pull, the harder they often lean into that pressure and pull you faster and faster around the arena. So that's not the response we want to get into with a horse. And also we tend to lose our position and start encroaching on our sidewalker space right here. So if you have a horse that's walking out faster than you like, just as like when we were warming Ranger up, first thing to do is voice in energy. Think about slowing down, sinking down to the ground. Ask your whole team of sidewalkers to slow down. And one really great tip is to check with your rider. Sometimes, unbeknownst to us, our rider is squeezing away on our horse and we're sitting here trying to slow them down, and poor Ranger says, "What's the message? I'm confused." So think about the big picture. You can do adjustments on your own part here at the horse's head, but remember there's other people in the equation too. So go through that checklist in your head every time. And then if the horse is just still walking a little bit more, a little naturally faster than you would like, some great techniques are really to think about sinking that energy down, slowing your step down. Ask your volunteers to slow their step down. And then that light half halt with the lead rope. Again, I want to really emphasize, I don't want to see the constant pulling tug of war. If you've lost your smile for longer than a second, then we're not doing it right. The goal is to pull, release, sink your body down, slow your energy down, and eventually the horse should come back down. If they are flying around the arena and it begins to look like a safety issue where they are concerned about something, then we'll go into emergency procedures that you would want to take. But the goal would be to ask your horse to slow down in a way that is reasonable for them. Some of our horses have a longer stride, so you may have a little bit more of a workout to walk with them, but we want it to be controlled, not out of control. It's a lot further ahead than I'd like. I'm going to bring my energy down. by the end of the line, hopefully his head is right next to my shoulder. The other thing that you may have noticed as well is that there were times when we were turning, especially when I wanted him to go away from me, where we started to lose this space in between us. A really great way to establish your space with a horse, even if you're just walking around and you're noticing they're right on your shoulder. As sweet as that may feel sometimes, and it seems like it's a little nuzzle, they're checking in to see how much they can get away with and how much you're going to be able to be the boss. So you always want to have about a foot of distance away from you and the horse, and with some horses maybe even a little bit more. But if your horse is encroaching on your space, it's the good old chicken wing method, where you really are just going to flap your arm. Well, you don't have to do that one as much, but definitely the one closer to your horse, and you can tell all it does is immediately establish that distance from me to him and where I want him to be. It's not invasive, it doesn't hurt him, but it just very quickly lets him know, oh, you're getting a little too close, I'd like for you to give me some space. So after we're using the chicken wing, it's also a really great way to establish that space and immediately correct a horse that maybe is getting a little too close and as a result starts doing that little nuzzle that can unfortunately turn into a nip. And that's a behavior we definitely don't want to escalate with our horses. So if you have a horse that's getting in on your space and maybe is starting the process of that nibble that can turn into a nip, we want to nip that in the bud right away. So this is a great way to say, nope, you stay right out there, you don't need to come over here, and I definitely don't want to see you the nibble nip. The last thing I want to cover very quickly is a leader's role in an emergency situation. Hopefully this is not something that you ever have to put into practice, but we want everyone to feel comfortable with what the steps are and what the best response is if your horse is spooking or concerned about something. As a leader, the first thing to remember is your primary responsibility is the horse. It's very challenging when we have a rider on, we may want to split our attention, but you are in charge of the horse. Let the sidewalkers work to get the rider off. So your goal is going to be to contain and to calm the horse as best you can for as long as you can. The hope is that we'll be able to diffuse any spooking situations. However, there may be something that a horse is not able to recover from, and we feel the need to remove the rider from the horse or an emergency dismount. In this case, your best goal is the same body language that we do when we're asking a horse to whoa in class. It's in their thought process. They understand what that body language means. So in the safest way possible, you are going to put yourself in the whoa position. The goal, again, is to give your sidewalkers or your rider, if they're independent, as much time as possible to get off as safely as possible. No one is going to be able to stop a horse if they really want to go. So it's not your goal to hold the horse to the ground. We're not able to do that. However, if we can keep the situation as contained for 5 seconds or 10 seconds, that will allow the sidewalkers to emergency dismount the rider. So while you're doing this, obviously think through things that you can do. You can talk to your horse, you can use those calming tones and voices, a whoa and a easy. Again, you don't want to get into a tug of war, but if you're doing these half halts and whoas, hopefully that'll calm your horse long enough to keep them still for the rider to be dismounted from the horse. From there, as best as you can to stay with the horse, please do so. If it becomes a situation that is unsafe, where the horse is trying to get away from you and you would be putting yourself in danger to hold on to the horse, you need to let go, and that's okay. But as long as you can stay with the horse, if once the rider is off, the horse has calmed back down, then you need to remove the horse from the situation. Allow the instructor and the sidewalkers to tend to the rider, and you go as far away as possible. Once it's safe to do so, the instructor may even ask you to remove the horse from the arena and take them back to the barn. But your role, as long as it is safe for you to do so, is to stay with the horse and to try to keep the horse as calm and contained as possible for as long as possible. And one of the biggest things that you can do to give the most amount of time is to pay attention to the language your horse is telling you. Ranger is a pretty relaxed horse right now. In fact, he may be napping while I speak. However, there's a lot of body language that the horses can tell us that we need to make sure that we're paying attention to. So again, if you are out in front of your horse leading, you're not right next to them, you have no idea what's happening behind you. So again, keeping your shoulder right behind your horse's ear allows you to see out of the corner of your eye whether their ears are flickering back and forth or their ears are pinned, the white of their eye, whether their head is up in the air, they're snorting. all of these things are telling me that Ranger is not comfortable with something. If I start to see those behaviors, I want to immediately alert the instructor and begin to let my team know that I'm noticing something. Sometimes it's something that'll go away in 2 seconds. It was just a minor little surprise. The horses calm back down, you move on. However, we don't want to lose those precious seconds that we could have in safely dismounting the rider if we ignore that body language. So please pay attention to your horse, even when they seem relaxed and checked out. Sometimes those are the moments where they get the most surprised by unexpected things because they weren't tuning into the world around them. So always keeping an eye on your horse, alerting the instructor, alerting your team of sidewalkers and the rider, because you are the horse expert in this team at the horse, and you're the one who's going to best be able to tell when something needs to happen immediately. So we've covered a lot of information today, and the most important thing to walk away from this is, when in doubt, check in with your instructor. They're our greatest resources when it comes to how they would like for the horses to be handled in the classes, and they know best what the riders need when it comes to what type and level of support we need to provide. So hopefully we answered a lot of your questions today, but if you have things that come up in a class, or if you're unsure about something, always check in with your instructor. They're the best type of on-the-job training around. All right, well, thank you so much for tuning in, and we really hope this has been a helpful instructional video. You can look at it as sort of phase 1 of the foundation steps of how everyone will be leading the horses in our therapeutic riding classes. The intention is to create consistency amongst our leaders, and hopefully this will be an easy way to check back in and say, how exactly did I need to do that well, or how exactly should I be leading and warming my horse up? So please feel free to reference this again, and our intention as an organization is to offer further continuing education to layer on more levels of experience when it comes to these leading techniques, so that hopefully everyone will be able to get a great lesson out of their horse, and our horses will be happy knowing what the expectation is. So I want to thank you for tuning in, and I want to thank Ranger for being a wonderful demo, and so we'll see you out at the farm, right, Ranger?